In a video a long while ago, I argued for why everyone who is able should learn the original languages of Holy Scripture, and further that I would make videos recommending resources to that end. That was 2 years ago. But now that video is here, or at least the first of a series of videos, as I'll be recommending resources for different languages individually. Here, I will be showing off my favorite resources for learning the Greek of the New Testament and of the Septuagint, specifically Koine Greek, but also of classical Attic Greek, more on the distinction soon. So if you're looking for resources on how to learn the language, you have come to the right place. Before I recommend specific resources for learning ancient Greek, it's first necessary to understand how to learn ancient Greek. The most common method utilized in universities, Bible colleges, and so on is commonly known as grammar translation method, which refers to the focus on learning the technical grammatical rules of a language, such as the definitions of words, different cases of nouns, verb forms, how words are arranged in a sentence or syntax, and so on, with the aim being a deep analytical knowledge of the language, or rather a deep technical knowledge of the language and accurate translation. But this method is extremely inefficient in reality and even detrimental to proper understanding of the language. The best way to learn ancient Greek and other classical languages is through the natural approach of learning. Natural approach is, well, self-explanatory, natural. Rather than focusing entirely on technical language rules and paradigms, learners are taught the language in an organic manner, aiming not simply to translate the language, but to properly read, write, think, and even speak the language. A technical term that denotes the core of the natural approach is comprehensible input, which refers to language that can be understood by students before they understand all the words or grammar rules, which is basically how we are taught language as babies. This is employed through a series of strategies like reading longer texts in the target language, receiving and carrying out commands from the language, or even giving those commands, listening to others speak the language and responding in kind, and many more activities. Unlike the very common grammar translation method, this establishes true comprehension of a language such that one understands it as it is and is able to use it without mediation through the primary language like English. And because of this deeper understanding, one is able to translate with far better consistency and accuracy. Now, this doesn't mean that one does not study the technical rules of a language on top of natural acquisition, far from it. Grammar study still must be done to acquire the deepest understanding of a language, but it is an auxiliary to natural acquisition, not the other way around. With the proper method of learning well explained, we now proceed to the main bulk of this video. The best resources I know of for learning ancient Greek, both Koine and Attic. As a quick preface, I must note that there are really not many good resources for learning ancient Greek in English, at least compared to modern languages and even compared to Latin. There are even less good resources that focus on natural acquisition, and so this list will be fairly short. With that said, first up, we have the Ancient Language Institute, which is an organization that provides courses on multiple classical languages, including Attic and Koine Greek. Their courses are designed around the basic premises of natural language learning, teaching students how to read, write, speak, and think in the target language. They also provide interactive digital textbooks in their courses to aid in their learning. Their courses are designed to cover both Attic and Koine Greek, as well as the archaic Greek exemplified by works like the Iliad. They don't differentiate these languages into different courses for a good reason. Attic is the higher register of Greek literature in antiquity, whereas Koine is the simplified evolution of the language that became the common speech of much of the known world, as the little intermission earlier would have explained. By learning Attic, you will also be able to read, and understand Koine, but studying only Koine will leave you with a bit of an uphill battle for understanding Attic texts. So this consideration is something that sets the Ancient Language Institute's courses and materials on ancient Greek apart from others. Nonetheless, these courses cost a fair bit of money, so I only recommend them if you have plenty of disposable income for a premium education. Next, we have the Polis Institute. They're a lot like the Ancient Language Institute in that they teach with natural method, both Attic and Koine Greek, provide pricey yet high quality courses, and so on. The key difference is that Polis has also published multiple books for learning and teaching ancient Greek. For example, they have their 2-volume Speaking Ancient Greek as a Living Language text, one volume being for students and the other for teachers. Apart from this, I'm not very privy to the precise differences between the Ancient Language Institute and the Polis Institute with respect to their teaching methods in their courses, so I'll largely leave that to the interested viewer to discern for themselves. Next, there is the Biblical Language Center. Like the Ancient Language Institute and Polis, they provide courses on ancient Greek in a natural method format. However, they are specifically focused on Koine Greek rather than Koine and Attic, hence the name Biblical Language Center. While not as extensive as ALI's courses, they are significantly cheaper and they have a unique solo curriculum called Living Koine Greek, which teaches the language through a series of animated short stories, immersing the viewer in real spoken Koine Greek without the hassle of booking online instructors or relying on YouTube videos of inconsistent quality. This solo learning curriculum is the main reason for my recommending the Biblical Language Center, despite their lack of material on Attic Greek. Next, we have the Athenaze books, which combine natural language immersion with traditional grammar lessons to instill a deep understanding of the classical Attic language. Each chapter begins with a list of new vocabulary, followed by a block of Greek text to be read as is, followed by explanations of new grammatical concepts, simple enough for the students to understand at that point of the book, but with additional elements to push their learning forward. The book's method combines a lighter natural learning strategy with the benefits of grammatical discussion, so that the student is not simply translating the text as in a grammar translation book, but is still learning the technical aspects of the language as he reads. As an example, here is the first block of text at the beginning of Volume 1, all in Greek, no translations, so that the reader actually reads and processes the text in Greek, rather than as a code to be deciphered. Here is the new vocabulary for the chapter, which is much larger than in other chapters, since this is the first text of the book and a basic vocabulary needs to be established at the start. There is an explanation of new grammatical concepts, some translation exercises, in this case just one, and finally some historical facts about ancient Greek. These books are solid introductions to the classical Attic language, I can attest through my own use of them, and have the added benefit of being usable in a solo setting without a teacher, although I do still recommend finding someone who is well versed in the language for guidance, since that's always going to be better than just going at it alone, even if you technically can go at it alone. As such, it is possibly the most important individual resource I will recommend this video, and so I recommend putting this at the top of your shopping list if you are willing to fork over money for resources. And I have to stress that for this and for any other book resources, do not ever, for any reason, under any circumstances, download them from Anna's archive. Next is the Basics of Biblical Greek Grammar, 4th edition by William Mounts. Now, this textbook is built on the old grammar translation method, but I recommend it anyway as a supplement that focuses on the technical grammatical issues of Koine Greek. And I deliberately specify Koine. It does not cover distinctive elements of Attic grammar like the dual form, hence the term Biblical Greek, Basics of Biblical Greek Grammar. The textbook is made up of chapters that aim to cover all the basics of Koine Greek grammar, rather than being walls of text, as has been characteristic of many older grammar translation textbooks, including the one that my Greek classes used. Mounts' text is compact and doesn't use more words than necessary. and each small chunk of new information is conveniently numbered in each chapter, making it easy to navigate, digest, and teach from. Next is another tool, which is, again, largely premised on grammar translation, but which I nonetheless find really cool and even helpful in natural acquisition, and that is the Greek Paradigm Handbook. This is a small handbook, both in paperback and spinal binding, that has hundreds of paradigm charts showing virtually every standard form of noun, adjective, verb, and participle in ancient Greek. That is, not just Koine, but Attic as well. I remember in my own Greek studies yearning for a single, easy reference source that I could consult for deciphering different word forms I encounter in the moment. Certain websites had partial paradigm lists, and others, like Wiktionary, have lists for individual words, but jumping from one page to another adds up in a lot of wasted time, and for most other website resources, they just were not complete. Which will be a big problem, especially when I encounter very rare words and rare verb forms, for example. But then I found this no-nonsense booklet that gets right to the point and just lists the paradigms you need. It lists paradigms as common and basic as the second declension masculine nouns and first and second declension adjectives, but if for God knows what reason you want to know the progressive optative middle passive forms of the didomy root class, well, it's right here on page 126. So when you get the opportunity, when you just have a few spare bucks lying around, because this thing is cheap, pick it up. It will save you a lot of headaches. My second to last recommendation is not one particular resource, but a medium of resources which have some of the best learning potential. YouTube channels, or at least video channels in general, regardless of the website. Sorry, YouTube, your monopoly is collapsing. There are numerous channels out there and more coming over time with excellent resources for acquiring ancient Greek. The first one I will recommend is the work of Luke Ranieri and his YouTube channels Polymathy and Scorpio Martianos. He releases content on various historical topics with a focus on language, but specializes on classical antiquity and even more so on classical Latin. He also has many video resources on ancient Greek, to the point of having his own Koine Greek pronunciation system developed from his own study, and which I actually used for a long time in my own study until I jumped to a standard Attic Greek pronunciation, reconstructed, of course. For example, he has a series of videos called Ancient Greek in Action, which is a basic primer of ancient Greek vocabulary presented in text and speech. Many other YouTube resources exist for ancient Greek, and you can consult a large list of them in a very helpful Reddit post linked in the description below. Just remember to wash your hands and eyes with fluoroantimonic acid after visiting that website. Finally, and once again, this isn't a specific resource, but a kind of resource, that being a speaking partner or group. Like any living language, the ultimate source of improvement will be continuous use of that language, both speaking and hearing, which you can acquire from the various resources mentioned before quite well. But none of those can top the experience of speaking and hearing the language with an active partner in front of you, whether physically or over a video call. When we use the language with others in a live setting, we are using language as it is intended. We're speaking it, we're hearing it, and as a result, more quickly internalizing the patterns of that language, increasing our overall comprehension. It's difficult to recommend a specific place for finding other ancient Greek speakers or those interested in that, since it is such a niche interest, even compared to the already niche interest of learning spoken classical Latin. So I simply encourage you to explore the internet, or if you're lucky enough, your local area or your local church, and find others who are wanting to learn the language, or maybe even already are well versed in it, and then organize times for speaking sessions and activities with one another. That concludes my brief guide to good resources for learning ancient Greek, with an emphasis on actual comprehension and not mere memorization of forms and paradigms. I hope it was informative, and I apologize for the short length of these lists as well as the very general nature of the last two suggestions. it's for the simple fact that there simply are not many great resources for ancient Greek, Koine or Attic, with a focus on natural acquisition. There are many different textbooks and resources and courses that use quote unquote traditional methods. They're not actually traditional, but that's for another video. Grammar translation methods. Tons of them out there, but I did not want to just recommend a bunch of those because they perpetuate a very inefficient and in some ways damaging method. Not to morally impute those who use it, but be that as it may, that's why the list is quite short, but I do nonetheless hope that the resources recommended here will prove to be extremely helpful for your own study. So I wish you the best in your ancient Greek studies, and God bless.